It was one of those mornings when the world felt unfair, the kind of day that tested the limits of human dignity. The glass towers of the city glittered coldly under the pale sun, a reflection of power, money, and people who believed they owned everything beneath them. And there, standing at the base of one of those towers, holding the tiny hand of his 6-year-old daughter, stood Jack Sullivan, a man who had lost everything but refused to lose himself. His clothes were worn but clean, his eyes weary yet alive with quiet pride. He had come looking for a job, not pity, but what awaited him inside would test his strength in ways he never imagined. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the strength of ordinary people, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who could use a reminder that humanity still matters. Jack had been a construction manager once, steady, respected, and strong, but after an accident at the site took the life of his best friend and left him injured, the company he'd served for years cut him loose without hesitation. His wife couldn't bear the growing weight of bills and sadness and eventually walked away, leaving only a note and their little daughter, Lily, behind. From that moment, Jack became both father and mother, cooking, cleaning, working odd jobs, and spending nights teaching Lily to dream, even when he had none left for himself. Now, months later, his last hope was a position at Valencia Corporation, the largest real estate firm in the city. The owner, Evelyn Valencia, was known as the Untouchable. She was young, brilliant, and ruthless, the daughter of a man who had built an empire from steel and sweat, and she had multiplied it with ice and intellect. Reporters called her the woman with a heart of stone. In every photograph, her expression was composed, almost sculpted, like someone who had learned to live above emotion. Jack entered the grand lobby clutching his small folder of documents, his qualifications, letters of recommendation, and a photo Lily had drawn of the two of them holding hands. The security guards looked him up and down, their eyes filled with quiet judgment. He ignored it, walked to the front desk, and politely asked for the hiring manager. The receptionist gave him a cold smile and told him interviews were by appointment only. He had emailed, called, and even mailed a letter weeks ago, but no one had replied. His savings were almost gone, rent was due, and Lily's school had sent another warning about unpaid fees. For a moment, his heart sank, but then he looked at the picture Lily had tucked into his folder that morning. "You'll get the job, Daddy," she had said, her voice so innocent, so sure. And somehow, that gave him the courage to wait. Hours passed. People in expensive suits walked by without even glancing at him. When the elevators opened, a woman stepped out, tall, graceful, wearing a white blazer that looked like it had never known a wrinkle. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor. The receptionist straightened instantly, and the entire lobby seemed to fall silent. It was her, Evelyn Valencia. She looked like someone carved from perfection, every movement precise, every expression measured. She wasn't cruel in the way of shouting or belittling people. She was cruel by existing on a level where others simply didn't matter. When she passed, assistants froze, eyes lowered. She spoke only in clipped tones, always about business, never about people. Jack didn't plan to approach her. He knew what kind of people she dealt with, CEOs, investors, politicians, but desperation sometimes silences fear. As she walked past, Jack found himself saying softly, "Ma'am, please, I just need a minute." Her stride stopped. Slowly she turned her head, her sharp eyes landing on him. The receptionist instantly whispered, "He's no one, Miss Valencia, just waiting." But Evelyn held up a manicured hand, silencing her. She scanned Jack from head to toe and then said coldly, "Do you have an appointment?" "No, ma'am," he said quietly. "I've been trying for weeks. I just need work. Anything, really." Her expression didn't change. "We don't accept walk-ins. Leave your resume at the desk." Something in the way she said it, so dismissive, so final, hit him harder than he expected, but he didn't move. Instead, he said in a steady voice, "Ma'am, I know you don't have time for people like me, but I have a daughter. She believes her dad can still do something good in this world. Please, just let me prove her right." A flicker passed through Evelyn's eyes, irritation, maybe surprise. But before she could respond, one of her assistants leaned in, whispering that the media team was waiting upstairs. Evelyn simply turned away. "Good luck," she said curtly, and started walking. Jack's shoulders fell, the last bit of hope flickering out. He turned to leave when he heard a small gasp behind him. Lily had run in through the revolving door holding the drawing she'd made. She had followed him from outside. "Daddy!" she cried, running to him. Her voice echoed through the marble hall. She tripped, the paper flying from her hand, landing near Evelyn's feet. Everyone froze. Evelyn looked down. On the paper, drawn with crayons, were two stick figures holding hands under a bright sun. Above it, in crooked letters, Lily had written, "Me and Daddy, the best team." Jack hurried to pick her up, apologizing softly, but Evelyn was still looking at the drawing. For a moment, something fragile moved across her face, a memory perhaps of something buried deep. Then she said coldly, "Children don't belong here. Take her home." Jack turned, his heart breaking, but before he left, he looked back and said quietly, "Ma'am, money can build walls, but kindness builds bridges. You have everything in the world, but someday you'll realize being untouchable doesn't mean being strong. Sometimes it just means being alone." The words hung in the air like a blade. Evelyn's hand tightened around the file she was holding. For a moment she said nothing, and Jack walked out, his daughter's tiny hand clutching his. The lobby stayed silent long after he was gone. That night, Evelyn sat in her office long after everyone had left. Outside her window, the city glittered like a promise she could no longer believe in. She looked again at the drawing she had somehow kept. She didn't even remember picking it up. The best team, it said. She thought of her own father, a man who had raised her to be powerful but never loved her for who she was. Every choice she made, every deal she closed, had been about proving she didn't need anyone. But now, for the first time, she wondered if power was worth the silence that came with it. The next morning, Evelyn called her hiring manager. "Find that man," she said quietly, "the one from yesterday." It took them 2 days to locate Jack. He was working part-time at a grocery store, loading boxes with his injured arm. When she arrived there, in the same spotless white blazer, people stared. Jack didn't even notice her until she called his name. He froze, wiping sweat from his brow, disbelief in his eyes. "I wanted to apologize," she said softly. "I was wrong." Her voice was no longer sharp. It trembled slightly like a note out of tune. "You said something that I can't forget. About kindness. I've built everything in my life except that." Jack didn't know what to say. He simply nodded, his little girl watching curiously from behind a stack of boxes. Evelyn knelt down to her level, something she hadn't done for anyone in years. "That's a beautiful drawing you made," she said with a small smile. "Your daddy's a good man." Lily smiled back shyly. "He's my best friend." Something cracked inside Evelyn, something that had been frozen for too long. She stood, took a deep breath, and turned to Jack. "I'd like you to come work for me," she. "Not out of pity, because I think I need people like you in my company. People who still remember what it means to care." For a long moment, he just stared at her, unsure if he could trust what he was hearing. But there was something different in her eyes now. Humility. Humanity. Slowly he nodded. "All right," he said quietly, "but only if I can earn it." "You already did," she replied. Weeks turned into months. Jack became a supervisor at one of her community projects, helping rebuild homes for families who had lost everything. Evelyn visited often, not as a billionaire checking progress, but as a woman rediscovering purpose. She watched how Jack worked tirelessly, always kind, always patient. He didn't talk much about his struggles, but she could see the story in his eyes, a man who had been broken but chose compassion over bitterness. One afternoon during a volunteer event, Evelyn stood on the site watching Lily hand out water bottles to workers. Jack came up beside her, and for a moment, they just stood in silence. She turned to him and said softly, "You were right that day. I was alone, but not anymore." Jack smiled faintly. "Then it was worth saying." Her eyes glistened with emotion. "Thank you for reminding me what it means to be human." That day, Evelyn did something she'd never done before. She took off her shoes, rolled up her sleeves, and joined the workers in laying bricks. The cameras that had come to film her corporate philanthropy didn't recognize her at first. The untouchable billionaire was gone. In her place was just a woman trying to rebuild something inside herself. When the sun set and the workers started to leave, Evelyn sat quietly on a pile of bricks, her once pristine white outfit now dusted with cement. Jack approached, handing her a bottle of water. "You'll ruin your reputation like this," he teased lightly. She laughed softly, a sound no one had heard from her in years. "Maybe it's time I did," she said. That night, as she drove home, Evelyn realized that wealth wasn't measured by what she owned, but by what she could give, by the lives she could touch and the bridges she could build. The woman once called untouchable had been changed forever, not by money, not by success, but by a single father's courage to speak the truth. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It helps us keep bringing you powerful, real-life inspired stories that remind the world that kindness still wins. Before we end, tell us in the comments, what do you think is more powerful, money or compassion? Because sometimes the richest person in the room is the one who still remembers how to care.